Well, hi everyone. I'm John Retlin with a retro review of WCW Thunder from April 26, 2000. And this is the infamous episode where David Arquette won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. So I need to prepare myself for this review. Ow, that should do it. Because that's basically what WCW did. They just bludgeoned the fans over the head and said, what you feel doesn't matter. None of our athletes matter because we're going to give the World Heavyweight Championship, our top tier prize, to an actor. I also want to say, before I go any further and get any more angry, I have nothing but respect for David Arquette. The actor, the man, the individual. Through any struggles that he had in his life, he has gotten clean, he has gotten better, and he's a passionate wrestling fan that did not want to do this. And he did the right things with his TV and pay-per-view payoffs. He was a huge wrestling fan. He gave his money to the families of, I believe, Bobby Duncan Jr., Brian Pillman, and Owen Hart. He, did really good stuff with it because he respected wrestling and still does. And he got a lot of unnecessary shit. I gave David Arquette a lot of unnecessary shit over the years, and I feel bad for that. And I wish I could take that back, but unfortunately those words are out there either in tweets or even in videos that I have done. But I have tried to come around on the fact that David Arquette was just casting a role and doing what he could. This is not the first time the WCW put celebrities in with their wrestlers and had them do shit that normal celebrities shouldn't do. Just being comedy spots is one thing, but to make an actor the world champion, of their brand, that was it. Not that WCW was salvageable by that point because it was already in the goddamn shitter, but no, we're going to give our world championship to an actor. Just because there's a movie, Ready to Rumble, that came out, which the movie is shit, but it's also kind of fun because it's just absolutely ridiculous, and WCW was ahead of the curve getting their brand out on a movie like that. Yes, you had No Holds Barred and stuff like that with different names, but it was Vince McMahon trying to get into Hollywood. But that was kind of a cool movie in the sense it was absolute shit. It was better than the Main Event, which if you haven't seen that review, check out the movie reviews playlist that I have. Because holy fuck, that Netflix original was worse. That was worse than Ready to Rumble. That's saying something. So, the backstory of this is that David Arquette had come into WCW to make some appearances, and Vince Russo and whatever brain trust was there, and probably only Russo, because Russo never had any respect for wrestling, was a goddamn idiot, a goddamn cancer to wrestling, and never should have been in wrestling. At least past WWE, because anything he came up with in WCW was goddamn ridiculous. But the idea is, let's make David Arquette the world champion. We'll get on USA Today, we'll be in mainstream media, bro. All it did was take the stake and it put it right through the heart of WCW. Not that WCW, I think, could have been saved by that point, but do not tell me that this wasn't it. And granted, they did do Bash at the Beach in July a few months later with Hogan and Jarrett and the whole shoot thing, and I got a wife and kids and I really don't need this shit and all that. We did all this stuff, they did all this stuff, and it was in a 3-month period. So I just did a review of the Nitro episode just before this where Arquette had beaten Eric Bischoff, and then he had and then DDP got a world title shot against Jeff Jarrett in a cage match that lasted maybe 3 to 5 minutes. And then they did the tag title match, or the tag match, where the world title was on the line. So I'm actually going to get to that here in just a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of the overlay. So this may be a bit of an anger-filled review if you can't fucking tell. But I want to say, once again, before I go any further, nothing but respect and love for David Arquette. From a wrestling fan to just a wrestling fan that is much, much bigger than I could ever hope to be as far as stature and everything. He deserves the love and respect, and especially for trying to do independent wrestling and, do a bunch of shows. I think it was like in 2018, 2019, he did a lot of stuff to try and, give back. He didn't need to give anything back because this wasn't his fault. So anyway, Shivani, Mike Tenay, and Bobby Heenan on commentary, a much better commentary trio. Unfortunately, I think this would be one of the last appearances Bobby Heenan had for WCW, if not his last appearance, because I think his contract is running out at some point. I can't totally remember, and judging by how bad Thunder was, I wonder if I'm just going to have to review every single episode, along with Nitro, and along with the WCW 2000 pay-per-views. I might as well. I'm torturing myself by watching this stuff, so what the fuck. Jeff Jarrett and Eric Bischoff have Arquette all beat up, got him out of the trunk. And then they get to the ring. Jeff Jarrett says he wants DDP to come down to the ring because he wants his title back. And then DDP and Kanyon get out to the stage, barely get down the ramp. He says, don't come any closer or I'm going to break his neck. You just called him out there, you goddamn idiot. Jeff Jarrett should have never been in the goddamn main event because Jeff Jarrett was a goddamn joke. He was a great mid-card guy, great Intercontinental Champion, but a horrible world champion in WCW and in TNA, what became Impact Wrestling. So he says, hey, we're gonna have a tag match, and the world title is gonna be on the line. And then you had Kimberly out there, and Kimberly low blows DDP after he was about to diamond cutter her, and then it stopped and said he wasn't going to, and then she low blowed him, and just whatever. And oh boy, we then have the announcers kill time. We have Bobby Heenan talking about the footage of where Bret Hart had hit Hulk Hogan over the head with a chair about a week ago, just over a week ago, and says everyone should hit Hogan with a chair as far as I'm concerned. Bobby Heenan's disdain for Hulk Hogan was absolutely great. We then have Ernest Miller versus Bam Bam Bigelow, which is based off of stuff that happened on a previous Nitro, and we Ernest the Cat Miller, one of the worst talents to ever be involved in wrestling. I don't know how he is as a person. I don't give a shit how he is as a person. Character, charisma, he didn't have any of it. He was fucking rotten. Wow, he could move his feet a little bit. You know who could also move their feet a bit? Kerry Von Erich. And Kerry Von Erich only had one real foot and was a much better man at this point than Ernest Miller was as a character, at least on screen. And Kerry Von Erich had passed away 7 years before and probably could have wrestled better than Ernest Miller. I don't like Ernest Miller. Can you tell? So he runs down Bam Bam for a bit, runs down the fact that he had bigger boobs than his mom. Yay. So then here's Miss Hancock, Stacy Keibler taking notes, and a sidekick for 3. A lot of these matches were barely 2 minutes. Like there was one match that was maybe 5-6 minutes at the most, and I don't even know if it was that long. That's exactly what this was. This was maybe a minute and a half, and then Bam Bam attacks him. We get Shawn Stasiak versus Kanyon, Kurt Hennig on commentary, Hennig and Heenan going over the history that they had together. That was pretty cool. Really sad how Kurt Hennig wasn't even going to be alive 3 years after this. He died in, I believe, February of 2003. But there was some decent wrestling here. I mean, at least Stasiak didn't try whatever the fuck that weird airplane spin slam thing was, because it looked like he hurt people every time he did. And I don't think he intended to. It just was a bad move to have people take. And then we get brass knucks to Stasiak because Hennig was upset at Stasiak calling himself the perfect one, and Flatliner 1, 2, 3. Kanyon, criminally underrated, underappreciated, and it's terrible that he took his own life a number of years later. I think it was sometime in 2010. It really was sad. And the fact that he was kind of blacklisted from wrestling for being gay, I'm sure that was one reason. It just really, really sad about Kanyon. So we then get Hennig and Stasiak, they're fighting, and then we get Awesome and Kanyon, they're fighting because Mike Awesome just has to appear there, and then a powerbomb through the announcer's table. Kanyon taking a move from Mike Awesome. It would not be the last time because Slamboree's coming up in 11 days. Yeah, I might as well review that, won't I? I might as well. I might as well at this point. 1, the channel needs content. 2, you guys enjoy seeing me lose my goddamn mind, like I am with this episode. If I thought that the current product was bad, my God, they at least put a little more wrestling on there than they did here. Looking back, some of the Attitude Era has aged very well. Some of the iconic moments, good and bad, are, because there are bad iconic moments. Actually, it's like, oh, I remember that. Okay, ooh, I remember that. Wasn't great, but you know what? It still hits the nostalgia, that nostalgia sweet spot, and then you get stuff like this. WCW in 2000 with pretty much doing everything wrong. Even when they tried to do stuff right, they did it wrong. So, DDP backstage agrees to the match for the world title. Cool. Okay, Mark Marrow in the crowd with his boxing manager, or a boxing manager, I don't know who. Mark Marrow, who had left WWE sometime before, because he had like a 3-year contract, and I think it ran out, and he was not working as much, and I got a little bit of something to say about that. And not about Mark Marrow, but about something they did with a segment with him later. Kidman comes out with Tori Wilson, and Kidman says, the legend Hulk Hogan is dead, and apparently Tori Wilson, by the way, is also immortal, because take a look at her here, and then take a look at her in any Instagram or Twitter posts that she puts up, any pics that she puts up of herself. She's a fucking immortal. And I'm not knocking at all. She has not aged. Is it the fountain of youth? Is it feasting on the blood of the innocent? What is it? Is it just good genetics? Is it feasting on the genetics of the blood of the innocent? I don't know. That's how science works, isn't it? Kidman says, I'm going to call out somebody and I'm going to have an open challenge. Here's Hogan, Horace Hogan, who I forgot was in WCW by this point. He'd been on the shelf, I guess, for a number of months. And nothing against Horace Hogan as a person, but it's just, why would anybody want to pay to see a Horace Hogan match in 2000? And also, the match, it wasn't that good. Bischoff comes out and we do a little bit of distracting. We get a chair to Kidman's ribs, who was still selling him after that dumpster match. Or not the dumpster match. It might as well have been a dumpster match where he got dumped in there and then hit with Hogan's white Hummer. Gross. And then we get a table spot where Torrie Wilson low blows him. And Horace doesn't really sell it. Goes to get Torrie. And then Bischoff hits him with a chair. And then a running bulldog over the ropes through the table. And because the referee's down, Bischoff counts Kidman on top of Horace 1, 2, 3. So we're just making up our own rules. And I thought ECW was spiraling out of control by this point. At least they were putting on some pretty good matches. Financially, they were in the goddamn toilet. But fucking hell, WCW was not putting on good matches at this point. And not to say the talent wasn't trying, but it's like everybody was on the goddamn card. There were, 7 matches on this goddamn show. Only a few went a few minutes, and I think this was probably the longest. This and the main event, I think, were the longest matches on the show. And just how fucking sad is that? So anyway, we get Tank Abbott saying he will beat up another person, and goes after the commentary team. No, he goes to Mark Marrow and Mark Marrow's manager, who apparently was in his 70s, late 60s, early 70s, I don't really care. And they have a bit of a brief skirmish. So here's what I was going to say about Mark Marrow's appearance. And you know what, I actually don't know why they didn't bring him back, because I think he would have been valuable to them, since the Johnny B. Bad character was still a name that people remembered. But he just could have been Mark Marrow, and he could have just been having some fun and played into more of his legit boxing and been used better than being destroyed by Sable, which was absolutely atrocious, absolutely ruined everything that Mark Marrow could have done in WWE, what was left of it. And I like the guy. I got nothing against him. I just don't know why anybody would allow their wife to powerbomb them, because it didn't work. But anyway, so they do this brief skirmish, and here's a question. So you have Johnny B. Bad, who, a character in WCW who had not been seen on WCW TV since or WCW programming since March of '96, I think, because he lost the TV championship to DDP, and then he would leave. He'd become Wildman Mark Marrow in WWE. Okay, cool, all right, good for him. He got some guaranteed money, pretty damn good contract. I think $350,000, $400,000 a year. And so he hadn't been seen on WCW programming for about 4 years. And he's just in the crowd there as a spectator, or as a special as a guest and stuff like that. So okay, you got all that. Johnny B. Bad character had a name there. Maybe he could build up to this program and everything, and have it be like where he's going to embrace the bad man persona. He's a bad man. They had his music ready and synced up already. Why did they still have the music synced up after 4 fucking years of him not being in the company? I know that this is nitpicking at this point, but why did you do that? Did you bring him out and, have him sit in the crowd and play his music before the show started? Why did you have the music set up? Also, why was WCW Thunder in a fucking rec center? Because it literally looked like maybe there were 4,000 people there. And I know that's a pretty big rec center, but that's exactly what it looked like. It looked like a glorified rec center. I mean, whatever. I've been in plenty of indie shows where they're, in small buildings and stuff like that, but this was a major production. Independent wrestling running in, smaller venues is by design and also to fit the budget. This was a company that was bleeding money at this point, but was still running all these shows, especially Thunder, a show that nobody wanted to fucking watch. Nobody wanted to be on. Everybody went to WCW because of Nitro and the house shows and stuff like that, but they would have more time off, especially the former WWE guys. And even some of the younger guys that could make that guaranteed money get noticed, but, Thunder wasn't around until the beginning of '98. And then suddenly they had all the increased house shows, all the stuff, a way to offset. They had a whole bunch of stuff going on in WCW that was just bleeding money like crazy, because Time Warner would not cover the cost for Thunder. And that's just where by this point it was barely WCW main event or WWE main event. And I'm talking about like how it was viewed. Like the ratings were in the goddamn toilet. They couldn't compete with SmackDown. They also weren't on the same goddamn night. But yeah, Thunder preceded SmackDown by almost 2 years. You go with the debut episode or the pilot episode in April of '99, and then it didn't debut till late August of '99. And Thunder had debuted in the beginning of '98. But it was overextended. WCW's programming was overextended, and gee, what does that sound like now? It sounds like WWE. So anyway, back to the show, because I ranted enough right there. I don't know why they had his music synced up. I really don't. We then get Sting, still covered in blood from Monday. Remember when he was covered in blood from the New Blood. Vampiro's blood was all over him. He bled all over this. It was a bunch of blood dumped from the goddamn ceiling. It wouldn't be the only time, because they're going to do it with Hulk Hogan later, which is another episode I'll be reviewing, or a pay-per-view. I think it was an episode of Nitro. I think. I don't remember, because some of that stuff's pretty muddy to me, but I do remember that stuff happening. But Sting's still covered in blood. Was he just left there hanging all this time and just left to do, left there hanging in whatever arena they were in, and then they were like, oh shit, Sting's still up there. He's malnourished. We probably should get him down. Hey, Sting, go take a shower. I gotta go to Thunder. Okay, and did he travel like that? Was he in plastic wrap so he didn't get anything over the upholstery? I know, again, nitpicking, but why was he still covered in blood? Oh, he's in a trance and he is just upset, and then DDP rescues Arquette, who is apparently in a discount boiler room somewhere. And then the wall, to the window, to the wall, and then Sting puts him through a table and wins a tables match pretty quickly. Seriously, that's pretty much what happened. The match was 2 minutes. Vampiro then brawls with Sting, and then Sting just leaves the building still in just a trance, because he's still covered in the blood. Didn't bother showering. Nope, none of that. Russo with Bagwell and Douglas. He calls upstate Rochester garbage, says it's a dump. And then he starts shooting, bro. Russo, again, one of the biggest cancers to wrestling. The fact that this idiot was an on-screen character and dragged every segment he was down in. It would be one thing if you made an authority figure who was a heel be the bane of everybody's existence, and eventually you built up to something where it was a payoff and they got their ass beat. No company has really been able to do that properly for a while. WWE sure as fuck hasn't done it that well for the last number of years. Going back for years and years and years, except with Austin and McMahon. That's about the only time they got it right. With this, though, all Russo was doing is he was tired. He was being a petulant child, so it's no shock that Russo is a diehard Trump supporter, and I know he is, because I remember seeing a video where him and somebody were talking about that. And that was fun. That was fun. If you want to know more about that story, by the way, DM me on Twitter and I'll tell you. Because I was pretty fucking disgusted with that. I wasn't surprised, but I got my reasons why I was disgusted. So again, DM me if you want to know about it. But there are certain people that are probably watching that know why I'm upset. So anyway, Russo's doing his straight shooting, bro, and here comes Flair and Luger with Liz, and Flair says Hogan is the man, all this stuff, and they scream and they do this, and Russo says, this is where I'm supposed to play the chicken shit heel. No, you're just a pile of chicken shit, Russo. You were an embarrassment to wrestling. You're an embarrassment to your wife and kids. Hopefully your kids can grow up to be actual adults, unlike you, and hopefully your wife maybe can get past the, just come to grips with the fact that she's with a little cowardly, small-dicked individual who is a coward and could never be a good man to anybody. And he couldn't be a good man to anybody. The one thing I will say about Russo is he did apologize to JR for the Ed Ferrara, Oklahoma thing, but he had to apologize because Russo was a goddamn dickless wonder. They realized, oh crap, I shouldn't have said that, because he was making fun of somebody who had an illness, somebody who helped make him quite a bit of goddamn money, because JR probably went to bat for Russo. I don't know the whole story, but JR meant a whole lot more to wrestling than Russo could have ever hoped to have. JR now in AEW means more to wrestling than Russo meant at his height. So anyway, cue lots of screaming. He challenges Douglas and says, hey, how about this? If I beat Doug, or it's like, I get in the ring with Douglas, I get a match with you at Slamboree, or I get you for 5 minutes of Slamboree. Okay, cool. If Russo interferes, he gets 5 minutes with him. It was a really messy goddamn promo. And of course, and then this is where Russo said, I'm supposed to play the chicken shit heel. Well, I'm not. I'm not Wahoo. I'm not Dusty. I'm Vince Russo. No, Dusty meant more to wrestling, even in his last couple years, than Russo ever did. Fucking hell. Anyway, he then mentions the Lex Express to Lex Luger and says, I'm glad to see you survive that car crash, known as the Lex Express. I think wasn't Luger in a motorcycle accident, which why he had that metal plate, and that's probably what he used to bludgeon Liz and cause her death and everything, because Luger was an abusive piece of shit as well. Hi, I'm being really nice during this review. So Russo then says, due to a contract, he said Liz is his property. Makes no goddamn sense, and he kidnaps Liz. The only way he could get a woman near him is to kidnap her. Not shocking that he would abuse women like that. And I know it was for TV, but I don't think I would be too shocked if we found out some stuff about Russo. One thing you're never going to find out about me, because it never happened, is I've never abused women. I'm an equal opportunity offender, but I'm not going to abuse women. You know why I'm not going to? Because I'm a man. I'm a real man. I am somebody who's a real human being, and I can respect people. Anyway, why was Tammy Sytch allowed to talk? Why was she put in a match against Paisley? Why did they not allow women that could actually wrestle to be on the show? Because Tammy couldn't, Paisley really couldn't. The guys kept interfering. Chris Candido for Tammy and the artist formerly known as Prince Iakea, and Paisley wins. Thank God Paisley wins, because Tammy should have never been in a goddamn ring. She was an embarrassment to wrestling as well. And Booker and Mean Gene are talking about the U.S. title and facing Scott Steiner, and then I don't know who this random blonde was that shows up. I sort of recognize her, but they never said her name. And so I'm drawing a blank. Let me know who this person was that talked to Mean Gene and Booker, because she looks familiar. I didn't have anything against her. I just don't know who she is. So we get Booker versus Mike Awesome. Scott Steiner and his freaks show up. Medeja, I believe, is one of them. And he joins commentary and just scares everybody, which is fair because Scott Steiner is a scary individual. Scott does some distracting with Booker, and eventually there's this, variation of an Awesome bomb. It was almost like a crucifix bomb, where I think Awesome meant to throw him more flat, but he kind of threw him where he landed awkwardly in the corner and then covered him 1, 2, 3. So that's Mike Awesome winning right there, and it was bad. Scott Steiner then attacks Booker, and then we get Lash LaRue, Chavo Guerrero Jr., Van Hammer, and Hugh Morris. I forgot that Van Hammer was still part of WCW at that point. Nothing against the guy, I just forgot he was there. But this would start the Misfits in Action, team. Wait, the blonde, Major Guns, I think, was who she became later. So anyway, we then get Brett saying he will make Hogan pay and pay and pay and pay. In an interview where he blames Hogan for not wanting to face him, calling him a coward. They revisit the history all the way back at WrestleMania 9 without mentioning WrestleMania 9, though they do mention the, at the time, WWF. And they're talking everything, and Brett was really bitter towards Hulk Hogan. It's a good thing that Brett got past that bitterness. And I love Brett, do not get me wrong. He's got every right to be bitter towards Hulk Hogan, because let's face it, Hulk Hogan helped, stunt the growth that Brett could have had from WrestleMania 9 on. It took WWE years to recover from that. Even at WrestleMania 10, when they finally crowned Brett the champion like he should have been at Mania 9, or kept him as a champion at Mania 9, we just had to do that to soothe Hogan's ego, and then he took the championship to New Japan and railed against the WWE Championship and went out of his contract because he didn't want to put over Brett, because Brett was a much better worker even now than Hogan was at his peak. I don't like Hogan either, and I know that he drew a lot of money, and that's great he drew a lot of money. Guess what? He also held a lot of goddamn people down, like Randy Savage, who could have easily carried the company, unlike Hogan, who could have never who always had to hold people down. Randy Savage could have, and was no saint either. There were a lot of things that happened with him and Liz towards the end of that marriage, and how protective he was. And there were things in his past and skeletons in his closet. I'm not saying I'm defending that, because I'm not. There's no defending that. But as a worker, as a person in the ring, as a wrestler, he could have carried that company. Should have been champion for a couple years. You could have had Savage versus Warrior at Mania 6, and I think it would have. I don't know if it would have drawn as good as Hogan versus Warrior, but it would have been a better match. So anyway, this was a great Brett interview, by the way. This is one of the high points of this show. This was the only high point of this show. What am I talking about? Because it's Jeff Jarrett and Eric Bischoff versus DDP and David Arquette with Kimberly as the special guest referee. And now we come to this whole thing where I need to prepare myself, by doing that again, because that is, again, what WCW did. They bludgeoned the fans over the head. They said, what you felt, all those people you cheered for, DDP, Flair, Luger, Hogan, Nash, Goldberg, Ricky Steamboat holding that championship. All the people holding that championship. And if you think about the lineage going back to before it became WCW, you had Rugged Ronnie Garvin holding the championship. Dusty Rhodes held the championship. Harley Race. You had Terry Funk, Dory Funk Jr., all those people holding that championship, and you give it to David Arquette, who once again does not deserve any blame for just being cast in the role that he was cast in. But no, let's give it to David Arquette, because we need to get on all this stuff, bro. We need to get on mainstream media, bro. Who the fuck cares about championships? They're just props. This is Vince Russo speaking. This is why, one of the many reasons why Russo is considered the devil of professional wrestling. And why professional wrestling, he's one of the main reasons why it isn't able to be taken seriously. Now, yeah, there are some fans that do knock it, and there are some, and fans like myself do knock some aspects of it, but I do love pro wrestling, and I hate Vince Russo. I legit hate him. I'm going to quote Cornette here, and about the whole thing about pissing on his grave. Hate is a hell of a motivator. That is kind of what motivates me to watch these Russo heavy Raws, or not, well, even the Raws actually, but the Russo heavy Nitros and Thunders and pay-per-views in this portion in 2000, because hate is a hell of a motivator. And I don't agree with everything Cornette says, and there's a lot of shit that he said that I do not agree with, but guess what? Vince Russo is one of the biggest cancers to wrestling. He's the devil of professional wrestling. As far as stuff that he did, all the damage that he caused, and anything that he did, any good that he could have done had to be reshaped by the talented Vince McMahon, and had to be reshaped so people could actually buy it, because he couldn't write anything. He never makes any sense when he fucking talks. He's a goddamn crackpot. He's a goddamn idiot, and he's a goddamn embarrassment. So let's get back to the fact that this happened and an actor won the World Heavyweight Championship. And Arquette did great things with his payoffs, and he deserves a world of respect for that, for being a passionate wrestling fan and respecting the people that bled, sweat, and gave their lives for professional wrestling. Even if Pillman's, widow wasn't exactly the best person if you read up on her, but still, he did it for the children. He did it for Bobby Duncan Jr.'s family, because he had just died a little bit earlier that year. And then also for Owen Hart's family. There's so much good stuff that David Arquette did, but just giving a world championship, just using it like a prop, saying, here, fucking take it. Fucking take it. Just like, oh, you don't want to take it? Well, you're gonna. Arquette should have just said, no, fuck this, I'm leaving. Should have just left. Arquette had respect for wrestling. It was like, I'm going to make this work. And to his credit, he tried to make it work. It didn't. It was a terrible idea. It ruined WCW, what was left of it, because it was a shell of a goddamn company. And that's all on Russo. That's all on Russo and whoever else greenlit this idea. Whoever else was involved in this, and I mean legit involved in it, they deserve to be banned from wrestling for giving David Arquette a world championship. And yes, there are wrestlers that have committed murders, or wrestlers that committed horrible crimes. And I'm not saying that, but looking at what WCW could have been, this reboot could have worked. But you need a smart person in charge, and also you need AOL Time Warner to stay the fuck out of the way, and they didn't stay the fuck out of the way. And that essentially is one of the many reasons. This is where WCW was done. Bash at the Beach, 2000, a few months later, you could fucking stick that. I mean, it was a terrible thing, and don't worry, when I get to July, I am going to talk about that, because I'm going to have nothing but time on my hands for a number of months with the fact live wrestling isn't really going on in full force. But holy fuck, David Arquette is World Heavyweight Champion. That'll put butts in seats on WWE programming, because there were so many people, myself included, that were just like, I don't want to watch anymore. I would tape it. I would just tape it. I wouldn't even watch WCW programming live anymore. Even if Raw or SmackDown, even if Raw wasn't that good, even if Raw was preempted, even if Raw was taped, even if Raw was like some of the worst programming in 2000, which actually Raw wasn't all that bad. The McMahon-Helmsley regime got out of control, but there was a lot of good stuff about it. I I blacked out a lot of WCW. I remember some of it, but I remember all of it being bad, even with the talents that were trying. David Arquette as World Heavyweight Champion was an atrocity. And of no fault of his, through no fault of his own. But with the goddamn company, Vince Russo can go straight to hell for that, for the Brawl for All, and for a lot of other shit. And I'll say this, I may go to hell, but Vince Russo's ass, when it goes to hell, I'm going to cheer, I'm going to love, and so should you. Because he's also a fake religious nut. So anyway, credit to David Arquette, and this is a horrible episode of Thunder, and this is where Thunder should have been fucking canceled right there. Anyway, agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. Fuck Vince Russo. I'll see you soon.